Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee on this Wednesday. And stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to have a rant. Okay? But we'll do the weather first. Um, nice change this morning. Oh, it's so much nicer outside. At this time yesterday, we were already in the mid to upper 80s. And we went to low to mid 90s across Long Island. It got to 101 at LaGuardia Airport and 99 at Newark. New York City, as measured at Central Park, got to 94. It was mostly middle 90s. The hottest temperatures actually seem to concentrate themselves in and around the urban areas surrounding New York City and not in Midtown Manhattan itself, which has become really a kind of an odd development to some degree. Newark has always run a little bit higher than New York City, and so has LaGuardia. The spread has gotten so wide over the last few years, and I think it has to do with where the thermometers are located, and particularly at LaGuardia Airport, where they're doing all this massive construction. There's always huge traffic delays on the parkways that surround that airport, and I honestly believe that has had an impact on the temperatures because we never saw 7-degree spreads. Sometimes it'd be like 1 or 2 degrees, LaGuardia to New York City, but to see a 7-degree temperature spread to me doesn't pass. So I'm really questioning that 101 and maybe I could see 97, maybe 98, but 101, I'm sorry, it doesn't wash with me. Newark 99, Newark always runs hot, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but we'll see. Maybe somebody will look at this. And by the way, that's not my rant. That comes later. Okay, so let's move along as we look through what's going on today. So we've got this backdoor cold front, which is pretty evident on the satellite. Right here is that front, very well defined, moving on through. And this is going to be around for a while because with these types of weather fronts, they eventually back themselves up northward as a warm front. And there'll be another some sort of ingredient for that to happen, low pressure that'll run toward the Great Lakes to do that. But this southward movement is still not done, so it's going to move a little bit further to the south before it stalls out. But the bottom line is for this area, we're going to see temperatures now in the much cooler 70s to near 80 today and in the upper 60s to mid 70s tomorrow, and I am looking forward to that. Meanwhile, out in the west, the big snowstorm, and it was a big snowstorm for parts of Nevada and Utah, and I was looking, they actually have freeze warnings up. Let me see if I left the Weather Service map up because it was pretty interesting. You know what, I'll just pull it up again. And right in here, okay, so you've got freeze warnings up this morning for a lot of much of Nevada, particularly northeastern Nevada, parts of south central Oregon, even northeastern California. And the darker reds that you see here, that's all excessive heat, the excessive heat warnings that are up for developing heat in parts of interior California and into Arizona for late this week and this weekend. This upper air system pulling out that produced some pretty hefty snows in some places. I happened to look. These were some of the snowfall amounts. It's pretty interesting. They call them snow tells. I guess they must be way up. You've got a Granite Peak snow tell, 12 inches. I don't know what the elevation is. This is 12 miles north of Paradise Valley. I don't know the West very well, so maybe some of you who do are familiar with this. Can maybe give me an idea. They do give you the elevations here, so you can see, so most of these are up about 6,000, 7,000 feet. Jack's Peak Snow Tell, 8,400 feet up, a foot of snow there. 7,900 feet Hole In Mountain, 9 inches. Green Mountain Snow Tell, 8,000 feet up, 10 inches. Really very interesting to get all of this in the middle of June. And by the way, they're going to also transition over to some very warm weather coming up over the next couple of days. So the snow activity in the west is done, and there really isn't too much happening on the radar this morning. When you look at the radar loop, we've got some showers and some thunderstorms moving into parts of the middle Mississippi Valley and the upper Midwest. By the way, the U.S. Open is going to be getting underway in Erin Hills, Wisconsin, and there are going to be opportunities for showers and thunderstorms over the next 4 or 5 days. It doesn't rain all the time, but you're going to see these waves of showers and storms moving across Wisconsin, going through the rest of this week and into the weekend. So let's see what's going to happen. And I'm going to come back to this. This is the upper air for the North Atlantic, but we'll come back to that in just a second. I want to just quickly go through what's going to happen weather-wise here in the east and then in the west. So we'll put up the GFS for you. Now, I think what we're going to see, first of all, with this backdoor front, there's just enough of this high that's building down into the North Atlantic, the northern parts of the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. So you're going to have some nice weather here for the rest of today and for Thursday. We're seeing some clouds and showers getting out of the way now as they sink southward, so weather conditions are improving from north to south. But, you know, tropical moisture south of the warm front that's going to be developing is going to produce some showers and some thunderstorms. Now, some of that's going to start getting in here maybe as early as Friday afternoon, and there's going to be the threat for showers and storms probably through the weekend. Now, it doesn't rain all the time. I think there'll be long stretches where it won't be raining, so the weekend won't be too bad. It'll just be increasingly warm and more humid, not hot, but it will be very warm and humid in some places. And then on Monday, this weather front approaches with probably the best chance for widespread shower and thunderstorm activity before it moves by and offshore on Tuesday. And then after that, looks like another weather front will be passing through on Thursday. This could set us up for maybe another day or so of very warm to hot temperatures late next week before another front moves on through and goes offshore. So, you know, we mentioned this yesterday that this is going to be the signature pattern going forward here in the east. In the west, we'll pump up the map in the west. And I did not forget my rant, by the way. I will get to it. Okay, so in the west, you know, as we said, it's going to start turning hot for the southwest with the easterlies that are going to be developing to some degree. And the thermal, what we call the thermal low, this is sort of a semi-permanent low that forms in the late spring and stays there all summer and just basically pumps heat up and creates east winds and, you know, upslope, downslope, all the rest of it, and especially for in California, on the California side. So it gets very hot inland, but really with the weather pattern setting up, doesn't look like too much is going to be happening now going forward. Just sort of typical summertime mode in the western part of the United States. And let's very fast look at the upper air, because then I want to get to the tropics. And we'll put up, no, hang on a second. There we go. So here we go with the upper air, and I'll just back it up. So, you know, we've been talking the last number of days with respect to the fact that, you know, the ridge in the east is still here. We've got this strengthening storm that's moving off of Newfoundland and moving to the east that was responsible for pushing this back door through. Now, in general, troughing develops, and that's going to be swinging eastward. Now, I just want to show you, by the way, I'll point this out right now. You've got a ridge out in the west that's going to mean for you know, warm temperatures developing out in the west. You have a ridge off the Atlantic coast, okay, with kind of a trough right there in between. There's a weakness that's extending down into this area here, okay, and that's in the upper layers of the atmosphere. So that weakness is important because it's going to eventually impact anything that develops down in the northwestern Caribbean or southwestern Gulf of Mexico in terms of its track. So the strength of the ridges on either side and the strength of the trough in the middle are going to be impacting anything that forms down here, either impacting it by drawing it further north or northeast over time, or perhaps northwest, or even west. I am just speculating here, folks. I just want you to know that. This is just speculation on my part, but I'm just kind of want to put this out on the table so that you have an understanding of where we're going with this when we get to that tropical system. So that trough actually strengthens here in the east, going through the first part of next week, and then it pulls up, and then you get another arm that swings around. So this idea of weather fronts coming through every couple of days, seems reasonable and will continue through the next couple of weeks. And then after that, we get to the end of the month and the first part of July. We're going to have to see what happens with this upper low that concentrates itself over Labrador. If it pulls out, the ridge may want to build up in the eastern part of the United States for the very beginning of July, going into the 4th of July. Just putting it out there. Okay, so let's look at what's happening. I want to go to the European model today. We're going to go to the with respect to the tropics, and I'll put up the Western Atlantic view. And European, we only have limited data to see with this, which is unfortunate because, but we don't own the European. It's not and it's certainly not a government. It's privately produced, so you have to pay for the stuff, and nobody has tens of thousands of dollars for free money to pay for licensing fees and so on. So this is what's publicly available. And here we have it. This is for Sunday night. There is low pressure actually starts to develop during the day Sunday in the Northwest Caribbean, and then emerges into the Gulf of Mexico during Monday. All right. And this is the Europeans' view. Europeans kind of shifted a little further north on this run to some degree. It wants to bring a low into the coastal bend of Texas, or a tropical storm of some kind for the middle and latter part of next week. I certainly think, based on what the upper air is, assuming something does develop, and there's no guarantee that it will, by the way, that's a reasonable outcome to expect given the time of year. The GFS kind of, let me just back it up. Kind of, you see the lower pressures that it does develop keeps it more in the northwestern Caribbean on Monday, and really just kind of takes its time with it before it emerges it out into the southwestern Gulf during the middle part of next week, and then just sort of leaves it there. So we really don't have a good feel. And also, that happens sometimes. They get into the southwest Gulf, and they get trapped in sort of a no man's land when it comes to the flow. They're too far south to get to feel the impacts of troughs to the north, and yet they're far enough north where they don't get that real good easterly push to push them westward. So they just sort of sit there, and eventually they kind of drift their way inland and disappear. So you know what? That's certainly within the realm of it's certainly possible you could see something like that happen. And of course, you can always have the good old Canadian to do something that you don't expect. And being that this model likes to spin up everything, it spins up actually two systems. So the first one emerges early on Sunday in the Northwest Caribbean and actually comes into the southeastern Gulf of Mexico and moves northwestward to the Florida Panhandle by Tuesday. And then it spins up a second low off the Yucatan Peninsula and takes that one into the Gulf of Mexico and starts to aim that for the coastal bend of Texas, but then it just sort of loses it into the southwestern Gulf. Okay, so what do we make of all of this? This is all, again, speculation. I show these things, I show you the maps because you can see them for yourselves, and I just, I want, some people criticize people who show maps. You know what? They're in the public domain. I'm not showing you anything that's secret here. Anybody can look at these things, and if you should be able to look at them and free to look at them as they're put out there. But you should have an understanding of what the stuff means, so we don't get carried away. And here we go with the upper air, and I just so you get an idea here. What I pointed out before, you've got a strong ridge in the Atlantic, and it's right in there. You've got a strong ridge out in the west, and you've got this weakness in the middle. So it's how the strength of both those ridges to the east and to the west. This is the Canadians' view of it. You've got this upper high. Here's the edge of the upper high here on the Atlantic side, and here's the edge of another upper high that's on the Pacific side. So there's your weakness right in here. And, again, how this system is going to react to the strength of this upper high or this upper high. If one of them dominates over the other, it could mean a more westerly track. It could mean, a more northerly track. It could mean even a more southwest track over time. So this is why these things are, oftentimes very difficult and problematic as far as figuring it out. I think this is gone now, this sector view of what was Tropical Storm Calvin, which existed for it would seem like all of 5 minutes. But you see here on the water vapor imagery, you've got a long stretch of tropical moisture running from the Caribbean, which, by the way, was dry a few days ago. So that's all saturated up now into the Northwest Caribbean, across Central America, and out on the Pacific side. So it's out of this zone that something is going to eventually spin up, and that pressures are going to be unusually low for this area here going into the weekend and in the very first part of next week. And by the way, the National Hurricane Center also mentions this disturbance way out in the tropical Atlantic, what they call a well-organized tropical wave that is moving westward. They rated a low chance of development over the next 5 days, which would make sense. It's climatologically in a place where the systems usually don't develop this time during this time of year. You've got drier air surrounding it to the north of it. You can see it right here, that dark, almost whitish, brownish white patch of on the satellite loop. That's dry air nearby, and there's probably some hostile winds aloft along the way. So we're not going to really be too concerned about this. This is the area that we're going to pay attention to. Okay, so what was the rant about? Well, I'm going to put this local map, and I'm going to just, talk about this. It happened on my Facebook page. If you look down on my YouTube channel where I have instructional videos, I did put up a video from a colleague of mine, Andrew Pinheiro, young meteorologist, just starting out, really smart kid, and he's got a very bright future ahead of him. And he put out this video. You take a look at it. We're talking about climate change, which I know is a sensitive subject for a lot of people. And anyway, rather than get into the politics of it all, what I really got upset about was that on my Facebook page, I shared that. I made the observation, and I actually spoke to Andrew about this. When he puts up his temperature chart, and you'll see it, he basically is looking at one data point showing, an uptrend in temperatures going back from 1984 to 2017. But one of the things I noticed was that if you look at the chart from 2000 to 2017, it looks like it's flatlined, that uptrend. If you just take out the first part of it and just look at the second half, it looks like that there's been a flat line. So I pointed this out to him, that is the case. On my Facebook post, I did mention that. I said it looks very interesting, the fact that it appears that there's been a bit of a flatlining going on. That's all I said. Well, apparently, according to one person, this makes me among other things, a Trump supporter, a climate change denier, and a few other things. I honestly, I don't get ideologues. I really don't. And I just want to make it clear, you know what? I'm not interested in politics. I really am not. I used to be. I used to love to passionately argue with smart people on the other side of the aisle, who at the time, when you had these sort of discussions, you could get very heated, and then at the end you went out and you had a beer and everything was good. You can't do that anymore. So you know what? I just wanted to just say, it's really very sad that even when not denying climate change, I'm actually being called a denier. just to be clear, my view on this, I don't want to get into the political end of it. I've always seen this as kind of like two separate issues. When you look at the data, and the data has been played around with to some degree, but overall, even if you kind of X all that out, if you look at the data, there has been a general warm up over the last 40 or 50 years. It's there. You can see it. And I don't think, you can't really argue too much with numbers. Okay. As far as everything else that's concerned, that goes with it, I'm not touching that. That is, that's a political question. It's very complex. It involves economics. It involves, all sorts of, taxation policies and all the rest of it. That is not what I do here on this weather video, on my weather videos, and I'm not going to do it. Okay. It's just not something I'm interested in. It's not something I'm passionate in. I know some people are. Apparently, some people use it as a way of defining themselves and who they are. That's your business. I just would ask, when you're on my page, if you're engaging, please remain respectful. All right. You can disagree, and you can even disagree in a heated way, but do it in an intelligent way, and that's fine. But please, no name calling or anything like that. I really don't care for that sort of stuff. This is supposed to be a place of enjoyment, have fun, and so far it has been, for the most part. So just keep it nice, and I'm okay with it. All right, so let's just leave it at that. If you want to take a look at what I'm talking about, you have to be on my Facebook page. So just go there. It's Joe Cioffi, meteorologist Joe Cioffi, JoeCioffi. And everybody have a great Wednesday. If you're in the Northeast, I hope you're cooling off and feeling a lot better about things, because the 90s are done, at least for a little while. All right, have a great day.